Let's continue with our registry library. Hello everyone, this is Ali Raza. Welcome to the Mentor Code Lab. In previous episode, we developed our first entry inside our library as the item registry. However, between the episodes, I thought about something. If you look, my registration starts with J and I for the main classes like the G item register. These are the ones that will be instantiated. Also, my reference is starting with G reference, as you see. Other than these, the other classes are just constant classes. Now, here is the thing. My logger starts with logger. And I thought that, okay, what if I want to start with J and I? I already published this version and I don't want to tweak the versioning. If you ever encountered something like that, especially if your library is not being used by others, you can come back to your Maven, go into the whole section and get rid of this artifact. But you can't access it from here. You have to go into recipe.io and log in. Let me do that and I will come back after I finish logging in. As you see in Repsy, now I have these repositories available for me. And if you look, I have one repository that's being used by Maven. And if I go inside that, you will see that it's glibs. Inside glibs, now I have the logger. Inside logger, I have glogger, and inside glogger, I have my artifacts. Now I can go inside one artifact, and here I should be able to delete the version. And if I do that, now that version is gone. So now I can publish this new version. However, here is another thing. My current version is being cached on my computer. And where is that cache? If I go into the settings, build tools, Gradle, you will see that it's caching my Mavens inside e/.gradle. That's the folder. And I need to delete everything from there. However, here is the problem. Where is that JLogger? I don't know. So if I want, I can look for log or logger, and you see that I have two folders, one inside module 2 metadata descriptors and one in files. Now I will open it in new tab and I open the other one in new tab. And in both cases, I will have glogger, and now you see that I have this version, so I can delete it from my cache in both cases. Now, are we done? Are we finished? I don't know. The other thing that I have to take a look is this .gradle file on my project. But here's the thing, I have many projects, and although I'm sure that I'm using it only in my UIO, so let's go into the UIO project, find that .gradle folder and open it in Explorer, and here I will look for logger. And let's see, here we go, glogger, and I don't want that. I need to delete these things. Okay, also I have this logger folder, and again I have a glogger, so I will delete it there. And if I come back up and I look for the, not desktop, the Gradle, open it Explorer, and inside .gradle I look for logger. Now I only have this one, and if I go inside it, it's empty. So now I'm ready to publish my Maven again and resync my Gradle on the UIO so that it will become glogger. Now I need to change this file, so I will rename it to glogger, and it will rename the class and the constructor at the same time. That was the whole point. Now you see that unchanging this version is a little bit of work, and that is why every now and then you will want to change this minor number or any other number. However, I decided that for time being, I want to stick with this number, so I have to remove the cached files, I have to remove the artifact, and finally I can go into publishing and do publish all publications to Maven repository. This will work because we did remove the artifact from Maven, that's for sure. However, if I want to resync my UIO, the easiest way to make sure that it is working is to see that it is downloading our repositories again for the logger, and that is 4 files being downloaded. So when you are syncing, you should keep an eye on this logging, and if you saw that you are downloading the glogger 4 times for different files, then you are golden. Okay, the publication was successful. Now I need to go into the tasks for Ultra.io and find the Ultra.io, not everything. Don't use this sync project because it will sync all the projects. Only Ultra.io, and you can hit reload Gradle project. That will cause the syncing on Ultra.io alone. As you see, the build sync on Ultra.io started. I will come back when it's finished. Okay, before finishing, as you see, the very first thing it's doing, it's downloading the glogger 2.0.0 4 times, because one is the .pom, one is .module, .jar, and source.jar. And this means that I successfully cleared that version of glogger from my hard drive and project. So now the project project has to download it. Keep in mind, if you have used this library in many places, or if you are sure that others are using this library, please be cautious about deleting the artifact and deleting the cache files, because you will ruin other people's life. In those cases, bump this version up to 3.0.0, because when you change the main class name, for sure it's not backward compatible. Okay, now we will have a little bit of problem in our main project because we don't have logger anymore. It's glogger now, and here is the glogger equals to new glogger. The reason I changed the name is that if I go with public static final and use logger, you will see that we have many different loggers, and it will become a little bit of a problem and confusing for people. However, if I type G, you will see that I have glogger and gReference. So even if I say JL, I have the glogger on top, or JR, the gReference is the first choice. So even glogger, that's it. I can easily now find my own classes without needing to look into different classes to find the namespace and the package name to choose the correct one. And this is something related to developing your API, and these minor things really help your users in long run. Okay, one more thing. This reference is the reference file in my own mod. It's not the gReference. The gReference is being used here. So if you want to, you can call it mod reference, and why not? Let's do it because it is easier to track. So yes, and you see that it did refactor it here, and that's it. So mod reference, you know that it's not the gReference, but it's your mod reference. Configs, you can change it to mod configs again. And here is another one. This is extending the config file. Now the config, let me check the versioning. Yeah, I did the same thing on the config. So if I want to, now I have to go down and remove this version from the artifact and my cache. I will do it behind the scenes because it's a repetitive thing, but I will definitely change it to gconfig because I want to be consistent in my namings. Okay, now we fixed the item registry, although the errors are not gone because I didn't reference the project yet and I didn't publish it yet. But here now we want to fix the block registry. So again, we will have something like the same line, but instead of item, it will be G block register new G block register with the mod ID. And for that, I need to add the name to the class inside my registry. And I did drop it under factory. I didn't want to do that. Okay, now this is almost identical to our oh, look at the Java doc, that gReference. Wow, seriously, copy pasting. Okay, G item registry. I will fix these Java docs later, or I can actually remove the Java docs. Who need the Java docs? Okay, so here's the thing. We want this, and we will add the constructor. And yes. Okay, so now we have that. Finally, we can start using we can use our class to add our registry methods. Now, just like the item, we may want to have a block with just the name. However, here's the thing. What should we use as the copy block? Because blocks are different compared to items. They need settings, you know, and without settings, I don't know what the block will behave or how the block will behave. So I will stop using just the name as we have in the item, I mean this overload, and I will start with the one that uses a copy block. So we will say public static that returns a block, and we call it register. This one accepts a string name and a block that we call copy block. Okay. Now, I will use another overload that I will write down the line. However, I will return my overload call with the name, with the copy block, and then I need to send in the factory. The factory is a default block. Yes, I don't have this overload yet. So let's add that before going forward. We say public static. Now this one returns R extends block. We return the R. We call it register. We accept a string called name. We accept a block as the copy block. And then we accept a function again of abstract block dot settings and the return type R. We call it factory. Here we start the same process. So we say register. Actually, let me copy paste it from here. One of them that has the factory because it is really close to this. We need a registry key of block this time, not the item. We call it key equals to register helper, get the key for this.mod ID, and then, yeah, it shouldn't be static. The same mistake, just like the previous video. And instead of register key item, register key, we want the block. This is the block. So we apply the abstract block.setting and not new. Actually, we don't need the new here. So abstract block.settings.copy from the copy block with the register key. We don't need these pair of parentheses and we don't need these pair of parentheses. Okay, finally we register the block as a block. And that's it. So we have that overload. And again, I forgot these methods should not be static. So that's one use case scenario being covered. And believe it or not, this use case scenario will cover in the right carrot box lots of these. Everything that you see that has a block.something, blocks.something, it's just a copy block. So I have covered almost all of these with just this one case. Now I have one that needs a factory side by side the copy. And guess what? We already covered that one. So again, this case is covered. Now we have this case that accepts a setting and a factory. So you can guess what I will do. I will copy this, I will paste it, and before the function, I will use an abstract block.settings. We call it settings. And here, instead of settings.copy, and by the way, we shouldn't have a copy block, you see, because we are just copying it from here. So we don't have the copy block. And here, instead of copying from any block, we use the settings that we sent in with the registry key, and that's it. Here's a question. What if I don't want to have any sort of settings? A default block, I don't use it in my mod because that was the special use case. And then you see that I have these, and these are just special blocks. For example, the stair will accept a state block. So this is the state block. And then this one is the copy block. Okay. So this is totally different compared to what we had before. Some of them only have the copy block, but I did name them, like, for example, the slabs. This is, again, a name and a copy block. So it is the same thing as this guy. However, I changed the name to be consistent with the stairs, the slabs, buttons, and stuff like that. Some of these, like the pressure plate, accepts a block set type or a wood type for the fence gates. Again, the doors needs a set type. The trap doors need a set type. As you see, we have some special conditions, but most of the time we are adding a name, a copy block, and a factory. Again, name, copy block, and the factory. So what we already have is covering almost all of my use cases. This is me. Okay, this is my use cases. However, we don't know if someone out there wants to do something differently. For example, what if someone wants to save a block and register it without copying any block? So we don't have this section actually. So what we have to do is copy this section and add another overload. Of course, we don't have the block copy. And instead of copying here, we call create. And this will solve this use case scenario, or a guy that wants to send a direct factory without any sort of block to copy or any sort of settings, you know. As I said, this is not my use case, but you should think about these use cases, especially when you are developing an API that other people may use it, because no one knows what other people will do. For example, another one that I will cover here is that what if I send in a settings directly instead of the copy block? So what if I send in the abstract block.settings as the settings? Now remember, we don't have a copy block here. So what I want is the overload that uses the settings instead of the copy block. And that is why I had this second overload, and it's just that, you know. Finally, what if we want to register an extension of a block and return that? So we have a name, and we have the block that is being instantiated for whatever reason, and we want to send in that block. So all we have to do is to copy this section, and we want the key, of course. Then we don't have this section because we don't have to instantiate any block. We already had instantiated the block. So we want to send in the registry with the key and the block directly. And you see that it's conflicting with this register because now we are asking for block or extension of a block as the second parameter. So we can't use this. However, there is a little trick here. We can change the name of the method. So what to put as the name? I can use register simple or register block. I like this one, register block, because it means that we have the block. I could rename this one to register copy, and I did pause there between the edits for about 30 seconds thinking about it. Do I want to change this one to register copy and then this one to register block, or do I want to convert this one to register copy and keep this one as register? However, I think this is the most use case for me, so I will keep it simple as register, and this one is register block. So that one is covered already. Now, as I said, I have some helper methods. For example, public that returns a stair block, and it's called register stair with the string name. And this is a block. However, this is the state block, not the copy block. And then we have another block as the copy block. We need to get the key, of course. And then when we return the register block with the name, and now we will instantiate our block because we have this stairs block that we need to instantiate. And as you see, it asks for a base block state. And this is our block state, state block.get default state. That's the state. And then we need a settings. Now for the settings, I will send in abstract block.settings.copy from copy block. And finally, after these settings, we need to register the settings with the key. So don't forget that. And this is the register stairs. I will copy this one. I will paste it and change this one to slab. So we get the key, then we register a slab block. Now the slab block doesn't accept anything here, and it asks for the copy as the settings, and that should be it actually. The return should be the slab block, and finally we don't use the state block, so get rid of that. Okay, now for the button, I will copy this one because this is the simplest one, and before the copy block, we will ask an integer for the pressure ticks, and this is register button. Now this one is a new button block, and again it asks for a block type, so my bad, I need the state. So before the integer, I will send in a block set type as the block type. The very first parameter is the block type, then it's the pressure ticks, then it's the settings, and the return is the button block. And that's it. If your method is getting too long, for example, here you can break the line. Then we have the pressure plate. Now pressure plate asks for the block set type, but doesn't have the integer. So I will copy this one. It returns a pressure plate block register pressure plate. It doesn't have the integer, and it's new pressure plate block. Of course, it doesn't have the ticks, and it's only accepting the settings. Now fence is just like this guy, the slab. So it's a fence block. This one will be a fence block and register fence. Now fence gate asks for a wood type. I will put it before the copy block. So wood type, we call it wood type, and this is fence gate block. So we return a fence gate block, and before the setting it asks for the wood type, and that would be the whole thing. Wall is just like a fence, so it's a wall block, register wall. This is a wall block. The door is asking for block set type, so I will copy the pressure plate. This will be the door block, and register door, register block, new door block with the block type and the abstract settings. Finally, we have the trapdoor, and the trapdoor is exactly like the door, so copy. This is a trapdoor, register trapdoor, and return a trapdoor here. Now here's a question actually with lowercase d and lowercase d here. Now here's a question. For something like door, trapdoor, and pressure plates, or any other one that is accepting the block state, block set type, and the copy block alone, can we combine them inside one method and get done with it? The answer is possibly no, because as you see, these extend the horizontal facing block. So I can't make the decision that, hey, these similar blocks are a generic that extends something. Of course, I can accept a factory, but that would make things much more complex because now I have to define my own factories again, and I don't want to do that. I thought that having some overloads like this makes things much easier compared to what we had before, or compared to what I have to do to make these things general or generic. So that's it. We have finished our block registry. Now I have a few minutes, so I will go with block item because honestly I think block item is easy and we should be able to finish it fast. So I will add the G class, and this is G block item register. Copy it and come back to main, and yes, I'm gonna say PSF for public static final this, and this is not J item, this is J block, this is J block item, and these should be all capital. Now this one is a new G block item register with the mod ID. So as you see, as I'm progressing forward on my library, I'm adding the API usage to my mod to make sure that I know what I'm doing and give you some examples of how to use it. Here again, we want that mod ID, and we want the constructor that uses the mod ID. Then we say public static, public block item as the returning type, and we call it register. All we want is a block. So we are registering a block item for a block. Now, if you take a look at our registry for block items, this overload will handle most of our use cases for the gems, for the raws, ores, even decoration, even the goo and machines. Almost all of these cases are exactly that first overload. We are registering a block item for a block. However, we have one block that is different from the others if I find it, and that is our angel block. Because for angel block, we are defining our own block item. Okay, this is one overload. Let me put the skeleton for the overload so that you can understand what I'm doing. Here is another one, public R extends block item. We return that R, we call register, and we ask for a block, and then I need something new. I block item factory of type item.settings and the return type, and we call it factory. And yes, I don't have this I block item. It's just the same concept as the tool factory. You can go back and watch that video. I will type it in a few minutes. And then I want an overload for this that I may not use, but before the factory, I will use item.settings as settings and then the factory. So I will provide the settings myself. We want to get the name. Before getting the key, we say string name equals to the registries from net Minecraft registry dot block, means that look into the blocks that we were registered so far and get the ID of the block that we sent in. That's the ID, but we want the name. So we want the path, not the namespace. The namespace is the mod ID. The path is the name of the block. That is how you get the name of any block if you want to. Then again, we want the key. So let me go here inside blocks and cheat and get this guy, copy, paste. But here we want an item. Remember, the block items are extending from item. So you can use item. So we got the key. Now we want to return the registry dot register, the registries dot item with the key, and then new block item for the block with the new item.settings. Now here's the thing. For the block items, we have to provide one thing before the key in new versions, and I did cover it in previous videos, and that is use block prefix translation key, because we are not providing any translation for our block items directly. And then we say register key with the key, and that's it. Now for the second overload, again, we want the name, we want everything, but before the call for the return, we have to say factory.apply. And yes, we don't have this method yet, but we want to send in the block. Then we want to send new item.settings. And actually, we want to send in this section. So take that, and that's it. So we got the factory and we applied the settings on the factory. Then we want to register the item with the key, and let's call this one item. So item, actually not item, R item equals to, and instead of the new block here, we want to register the item. So if it gets confusing, go back, watch the item registration video, and you will see that we are covering factories there. Now, in this overload, we want everything, but instead of new item.settings, we are having our own settings. So we just replace that. Finally, it comes to adding this factory, and it's almost identical to the other one. So it's an interface, it's iBlock item factory that accepts two generics, u, R, that has a method that returns R with the apply. However, the parameters are different here. We accept a block and then the U as settings. And that would get rid of the error here. As you see, both the apply and the class type is okay now. And this is the whole thing for the block items. Now, in the next video, I will come back and add some things that are not big at some times. For example, registering a screen or a status effect or component type or a recipe or entities. But we will have to think about data gen a little bit different, because for data gen, we need to overlook our data gen code for all the use cases and see what we are missing and only add that. Because I had this method in the library for creating the armors, and then I thought to myself, you know what, things has changed and I need to sit back and think about the armor and the data gen. But before doing that, we have many other classes that we need to cover. For example, the status effect, the component types, and other ones. And these are small ones, so I will cover them all in the next video. Hopefully it will go smoothly. We will have lots of these single class instances because I want to make sure that I know where I'm using what, and I'm not going to do the same mistake as before to add all of them in one instance. It's okay. You will see that it's okay. So let's continue in the next video. If you like these videos, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and turn on that bell so that when I publish a new video, you will get informed. Have fun, everyone. Bye.